Welcome to Big Blend Radio's special books and writers show today. We're very excited. We have got an awesome author and writer joining us. Her name is Renée K. Nicholson. Renée is joining us to talk about her memoir, and it's a memoir done in essay form, which is really neat. It's called Fierce and Delicate, Essays on Dance and Illness. And you can go to her website to learn more. It's Renee-Nicholson.com, and I'm going to spell that out because you could do it different ways. It's Renee, R-E-N-E-E. Nicholson is C-H in there, so Renee-Nicholson.com. So welcome, Renee. How are you?
I am well. Thank you.
Good. It's so good to have you here. And, putting out a memoir, I know that you do poetry and other stories, but this is something personal. So how does it feel to put that in the world and go, hey, everybody, here's my stories, and I'm sticking to them?
It's exciting. It's a little, I'm a little nervous, I think, as all memoirists are, but also I've had a lot of time to reflect on my time as a dancer and what I, went through when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And so I'm hoping that these stories maybe resonate with other people.
Yeah, I think, illness and dealing with illness is always a hard part. And we're seeing more and more people go through rheumatoid arthritis. I think it's kind of on a rise. I don't know what's going on, but it seems you think arthritis that, we've got to be in our elder stage of life for that, but that's not true.
No, and I think with conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis that are autoimmune conditions, I think we're seeing autoimmune things on the rise. And I'm not sure why that is, but I think just illness stories in general, a lot of people are touched by issues of health and wellness. And so I hope that people with whatever conditions they may be dealing with maybe find some resonance. And, when we see ourselves reflected in stories, that's always a special thing.
It's inspiring, and you're not alone.
Yes, absolutely.
That's important.
I think maybe illness is very much connected to how and what we are eating. And I really, really believe that probably 80% of the food that we eat has no nutrition whatsoever in it.
This could be, I don't know enough about, food and biology, although I have friends that are biologists that maybe could walk me through it. But I do know that when I'm eating fresh fruits and vegetables, I feel my best. So
that is no more Cheetos for us on the road.
Oh gosh, that's not even food.
I know.
Plastic.
Well, they have those things where they say like, an ice cream. A friend of ours, they were at an ice cream parlor or something. And this is where you start, that fresh, whatever that soft serve stuff. Someone had left their ice cream, threw it away, and it was in a trash can thing. And it didn't melt in the heat. Goodness. So you wonder, I know, I'm like, okay.
Well, what about the French fry you had in your car for over a year?
No, I kept it for 3 years and it stayed the same.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, it was an experiment.
So it's kind of like, oh.
It was my experiment. And then we were up in the Sequoias and the bed and breakfast we were staying at, the lady's like, you need to take anything to do with food, anything that has a scent to it out of the car because of bears. And I'm like, okay, well, I have this one French fry. She's like, take it out. I'm like, look, it's been in there for 3 years and it hasn't modified. It looks like it's fresh, out of, McDonald's or wherever it came from. And, oopsie. It was Burger King. It was Jack in the Box. I don't know who it came from, but it stayed, this was my experiment. And anyway, we're way off topic here. Let's go back to dance. But dance, this is also exciting that you're writing, a memoir from a dancer perspective. I think in all of our years of doing these podcasts, we've been doing them for 15 years.
Wow.
I think we've only had 2 authors on our show that have focused on dance, and each one of them said it's very difficult to find, whether it's fiction or nonfiction from the dancer's perspective. And I think it's important to shine a light on dance and the world of dance because it's timely right now, even with what's going on with the Olympics and, the gymnastics, what's going on. That whole conversation about what these women, and not just women, go through for this activity, this sport, gymnastics. And I think dance is right there.
Sure. And, I also think that we get a lot of memoirs from the folks who really make it to the highest levels of the art form. You know, if you're a principal dancer in a major ballet company, your chances of getting your story out there are a lot higher than the kind of workaday dancer that I was, and that some others have been. So I think, you know, even within that, you know, I'm glad to see these stories come out. You know, I'm you know, looking at what's going on right now with gymnastics. You know, we're uncovering some important issues there, and I hope that the space is open for people at all levels to tell their stories.
Yeah.
It's really true. My brother was a gymnast, and he was the California state champion for a year. And he really went through a lot. Just the teammates were kind of on the surface, looked like they were friends and buddies. But then when it came to competition, especially if you were doing any kind of dual exercise where one had to catch the other, it was pretty scary at times when there was drama between a couple of them, where maybe I'll catch you and maybe I won't.
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of thing. And your book reminds me of that.
Yeah. You know, I write an essay about a friend of mine who was a dancer, and we were good friends, but she knew she wanted to go on to college, you know, and study art history. And I've mused on, did that allow for us to have a different kind of friendship than, you know, the friends that you have, and you have friendships, but you are always in competition.
Yeah.
With people who understand what you're going through the most. And that's difficult to parse when you're an adult. You know, when you're a young person, that's rather fraught.
Yeah, that's a lot to handle.
It really is. And you see it a lot of places for sure.
Wow. So the writing part, I mean, writing and dancing, I think there's something that connects them both, because there's fluidity in writing, and then there's like the start stop, you know, it's the dynamics, right? So music and writing go hand in hand. For you, is that kind of like a newer process, like not a new process, obviously, with all that you have written, and you're rocking the writing world, let's put it that way. We can go through all your accomplishments and we'll be here for the day, but you know, just in regards to writing, do you feel like that's another form of dance?
You know, I like to think that I can hold them both like in parallel. And I see the commonalities. You know, I spent a lot of time studying the craft of dance, just like I studied the technique of writing. And, you know, I think that anytime you learn how to devote yourself to something, you can turn that around and use that in other ways in your life. I do, you know, I think for a while I was sort of obsessed with writing about dance because it was so much a part of my world, my upbringing, who I am, you know, as an identity. But since I've written this book, I still write about dance quite a bit, but I also feel free to look at other subjects.
Oh, cool.
And that's really beautiful too.
Yeah.
You know, to know that you have that range. I think I will probably always have, you know, things to say about dance and dancers. I've been thinking a lot. The very last trip I made before, you know, everything sort of shut down was to drive from my home in Morgantown about 3.5 hours to the Kennedy Center to see ABT do Giselle. And American Ballet Theater's ABT. And, you know, like that's really significant. I've really missed being an audience member and to see, you know, live performance. I've also been just really impressed with how many companies have been able to pivot to dance in digital forms and, you know, more film-based forms, so that those dancers can still be out there and performing. So I think I have, you know, percolating in my brain some ideas about these things, but also writing about things completely different than dance, and that's really freeing and beautiful too. So I think I hold them in tandem, sort of parallel to each other.
That's cool. And you're also writing other people's stories for them.
I am. Yeah, I spend a lot of time working in collaboration with WVU Medicine and working with patients to tell their life stories. A lot of times when you find yourself in the role of being a patient, it's easy to lose your identity, right? But you had a whole life before whatever diagnosis you've had happened, right? And so I think connecting the patients with those stories and helping the doctors and other health clinicians, nurses, PTs, OTs, the whole gamut, see the full person that they're treating can really be healing. It can help in other parts of diagnosis. One of my colleagues is an occupational therapist, and she can look at these stories and understand, the different occupations that make up someone's life. How do you make sure someone who has a difficult diagnosis can still do all the things they want to do? Well, an OT can look at a story. This man wants to continue to work in his garden. How do we help him? How do we get him the tools so he can do that, that he can retain meaning in his everyday? Those things are really, it's interesting and beautiful to see how writing can serve a purpose in those scenarios.
I love this because, it's like we always talk about, well, who are we? We were just talking about this on an interview with one of our experts, Shelley Wizen. She teaches about the art of being and about who we are. Are we, being true to ourselves? And who are we as an individual? Are we our career? Are we this? And then it's so true when something medical happens, whether it's cancer or rheumatoid-arthritis, right? Or it's suddenly, oh, I'm the person with cancer versus, or like, okay, a change happens medically, dance going from, being a dancer to, okay, I have to have, replacement surgery on my knees, suddenly it's like, am I a dancer anymore? Or am I a conglomerate of all these things? And we lose sight. I feel sometimes we just have that rhino mentality, of just seeing the one thing. And it's important to have all those stories. So that's why we're the blend. We're a little bit of everything.
No, absolutely. And to your point, after I had knee surgery, I went back to do teacher training in New York City at American Ballet Theater. And I could see myself both as patient and as dancer kind of together and realize that my relationship would continue to evolve, right? My relationship to dancing, but also, I brought a notebook that I only used to write my experiences, right? That later turned into essays. So like all those things are part of that experience. And I didn't go because I thought, oh, I'll get an essay out of this. I went because I realized I could do it. And that was exciting to me. And I was being asked to teach some dance. And that was starting to become part of my identity. And you're right. We're good at like saying, there's a line here and there's a line here. But in practice, most of those things just blur together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I, this idea of blending, you can have a very unique blend of things that make up who you are. And in fact, that probably makes you your most vibrant self.
And when one door starts closing, you might discover there's a whole lot of doors that have been open all along, but you were so focused on the one thing that you never saw all the other things that you could be doing. So in a way, I think you become more of a well-rounded person. I mean, everybody has their troubles, their illnesses, financial problems up and down. And I don't know, I think life does that to you so that you start using all your abilities instead of one or two.
Yeah. I think
those make you tired though.
Well, I look at like dancers, I mean, it's so consuming to be a dancer, not necessarily always the successful, right? It's to be a dancer because you're going back to food, Cheetos, you can't be doing that every night. And there's so much practice. I mean, it is blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, the work that goes into just the physical part of it and staying fit on top of it, the practice. And then it's like, oh, now I've got to have these routines down and this, memorize this dance and this move. And there's so much to it. And that's another thing. I just, I think as an audience, we'll sit back, and if it's a good performance, we don't see the work that went into it. It's just this beautiful flow, right?
But it looks easy.
Yeah, it looks beautiful and
when
easy.
You're good at it, you make it look easy.
And then then you go home and you're like, oh, I'm going to do a pirouette. Well, maybe not. You know what I mean? It's like this. They say more sports injuries happen on the big game day when everybody jumps off their couch at something versus somebody actually playing. And then people think they can play football. They run outside and think they can do it. And it's like, if you haven't trained for it, then here comes the injuries. So I think that's the same with dance, right? There's just so much work that goes into it.
You're absolutely right. And, one of the things that I think my dance training taught me was that sort of self-discipline and devotion to something, right? So when I transitioned to doing other things, and especially writing, I am a very workaday writer. I'm a dancer starts her morning with company class. Like I start my days with, pen to paper. Wow. I think that those skills can then transform into other skills that you can use throughout your life. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the dancer's training is to make the impossible look effortless, right? I mean, sometimes when you see a dancer, and some of the things that look so cool to an audience, folks wouldn't even know how hard, some of the things that look simple, deceptively simple. An example of this in one of the choreographies of the ballet Cinderella. Cinderella walks down a flight of stairs in point shoes. That is impossibly difficult. It looks like simple walking, but this is completely unnatural to the way we normally do stairs, right? And so, and I've seen dancers do it just make it look like it's nothing, right?
Oh, wow.
And I know when I'm watching them, that's the thing. I mean, some of the big tricks and things like that people know are really hard. And that's, I will never, ever begrudge a dancer applause for those things. But there are a million little moments in a classical ballet with things that look like they wouldn't take any effort at all. But when you've been in the world, you're like, wow, that's really hard.
Wow. Well, all I know is if you, even just the ballet shoes, there's not the slipper. I'm not doing it. I mean, it's that I can't even wear high heels anymore. I remember, having to learn how to walk and not look like, Bigfoot.
Right.
But yeah, so I did learn how to do clown shoots, both of us. We actually dressed up as clowns once for a nonprofit thing we were doing. So we do know how to run around in clown shoes. But
wow,
it's not that easy.
No, I didn't think so.
No, your feet are way too big. I mean,
they're giant.
You keep tripping over your own feet because the shoes are so big.
And I would think the balance would be like strange because you would be feeling so much weight beyond where your foot is.
But you don't feel where your foot isn't. So when you step, you're like, did I step or did I not? I don't know what I did.
Sure.
I did learn how to run in them. I did.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I chased somebody once at a street fair.
Chased a toy train.
Oh wow.
I chased a toy because he kept hitting our booth, and I just told him that's it. And I chased the toy train.
It was fun. It's a
Don't mess with me.
After the toy train. It was like, you go.
Anyway, things happen in life. But so now with this out now, are you writing more essays? And I wanted to touch back also on, you talked about having a notebook and writing. Do you do a lot of pen and paper versus typing?
Yeah, I start pretty much everything on pen to paper. For me, I like that tactile sense, and it helps me in the early drafts. And I do a lot of I feel like my best writing happens in revision, and probably that first and one of the most significant revisions is when it goes from the notebook to, say, a Word file, because I'm looking at every sentence, every word again, right? And so for me, that, and I just love the sense of writing in a notebook.
It's more personal.
It really is.
Yeah, it's personal. Yeah.
And other people, I think also, it says something about the time I grew up. I mean, some of the writers that are coming up have learned a lot more writing in all contexts, in a more mediated sense, on phones, on computers, on laptops, and things like that. So, each person's process is probably very personal to them. But for me, I kept a diary as a kid, and I just like that tactile sense, and it helps me slow down with my thoughts, and really consider what it is that I'm saying. So
yeah, and you have to get right to it. I mean, I was talking about this on another show. I said, back in the days of the typewriters, you had to get it slowed you down, but also sped you up. Like you had to get right to the point, because I mean, that was, talk about some exercise. Your fingers had to dance, push those keys down.
Yeah.
And I think there was another writer, and they're like, no, we do not wish we had typewriters anymore. I'm like, I kind of do, because it does slow you down, and because otherwise you're playing with whiteout the whole time.
Right.
It's you'll never get anywhere. So and you always love to have to go the shift, like ding, oh, I did a line, did a sentence, So I like that slow down. But also I think when you're talking about also writing pen to paper, that's that thing, you get right to, you're brutally honest, totally candid, and you also remember it. I have to write everything. People are always saying, can't you do one of those online calendars and to book your dates, do this? I'm like, everything is handwritten, because I will remember if I write it down. Like just the other day, Nancy, I missed Victoria because I didn't write it down. She changed the date on us and I didn't write it down, and I'm waiting for her interview, and she's like, I'm like, where's Victoria? I didn't write it down. It was on my computer. So that's the thing. If you write it down, you will remember it. There's something, and it kind of sits with you. So when you go from pen and paper to now typing it into the Word file, it's kind of, that's almost like the editing portion and the glossy part too.
It is. And I will find myself taking, when something I feel isn't working, I will print it out and I will handwrite the next round of edits, even if it's something I've moved. So I move back and forth between those two quite a bit, but I feel like there's something about handwriting that really just really connects my brain to words on a page. I like you, if I write it down, I'll remember it in a way that if I just kind of put it in my calendar, it makes sense to me.
What about those people who write a book just by talking, and it's being transcribed for them as they talk? I mean, that seems so bizarre to me. I don't think I could do that.
And I think that again, that's a writer to writer thing, but it also, so it opens up, that's the writing space, so to some folks with disabilities. So I just read a beautiful memoir by a writer named James Tate Hill, and it's comes out, I actually got a pre-publication copy, but it comes out August 3rd, and it's called Blind Man's Bluff, and he uses a lot of this assistive technology because he is legally blind, and so like on the one hand, that wouldn't work for me, it would be a mess, but I love that it's available for people who might not have any other way, or that might struggle with another way. It's still do it, but this enhances their ability to do that. For me, talking is never going to be as eloquent as writing, and writing is only eloquent because I can go back and revise it and make it exactly what I want.
Exactly. That's it would be, you'd get a lot of ums out of me. I mean, even this auto caption thing on Facebook with our videos, I'm like, no, I didn't say that. Oh, yes, I did. Count those ums, it'd be Lisa's book of ums. But no, but going back to all these tools, I think it is great. I said, it is great. There's also the rise of audiobooks. And do you see yourself doing that with this? Because a lot of times we have a friend, he's a blind guitarist, Joey Stuckey, out of Macon, Georgia, and he'll find we're posting, this author, that book. He gets so excited, and then he's like, I want to read this, and he's like, it's not an audiobook. And so I think, this is such a huge thing, and it's not just like podcasting is a big deal. People listen on their train, in their cars, while they're doing their dishes, whatever. So I think it's something important.
Sure. I think, now it's just contagious.
No, now you started it.
So with a book on a university press or a smaller press like mine is, you bring up a really important aspect, because do I want it on Audible? Absolutely. I would love for people to be able to enjoy the book in the format that makes the most sense for them. And if that's because of a disability, or it's because that's the way they understand the world best, I want it out there. I hadn't really considered how to get my book to be an Audible book, but I think it's going to be on my to-do list next.
Right. And with it being a memoir essay form, it's something that you could record with your own voice.
I could. Yeah.
Because that's more personable. And you're saying going through a university press, that's, some of the best books come from university presses. They really do. Working with a university, how was that in regards to a traditional, publisher that may say, okay, I want you to do this angle because this sells more. I always look at it I love publishers and everything. So don't yell at me. Don't send me the email saying, yeah, you really said 10,000 times. Is my new word. But it seems very similar to like the record labels that will push back on a musician or a songwriter and go, this is what sells. This is what needs to be on radio. And radio should only have 3-minute songs and not 7. If a musician has 7 minutes, I'm playing it.
Sure. So one of my favorite recording artists of all time was Prince.
Just love him. And a great dancer, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
has many connections with dance. Did the first public performance of the song Purple Rain was for a fundraiser for the Minnesota Dance Theater. So he's had a long time connection with the dance world, was connected with Misty Copeland, who was the first African-American woman to be promoted to principal dancer at American Ballet Theater, first in a major company like that. So he had an interesting connection to dance. He also, and this doesn't get talked about as much, he allowed the Joffrey Ballet to use a bunch of his songs royalty-free when they moved the company from New York to Chicago. And they were pretty much bankrupt before that. And even though the critics sort of panned those performances, audiences loved them because they connected to those songs, and now they could see them visually. And so a really kind of cool collaboration there, and seeing what a fellow artist needed. But yeah, Prince was unafraid to make a 10-minute song if that's what the song needed to be. And when I think about university presses, they take chances on books that maybe the bigger publishers would feel squeamish about. When I was shopping around Fierce and Delicate, I had 2 different agents who were actually really interested in my work, but didn't feel like they could sell this book. One told me to just write novels about my experience because I wasn't a famous dancer. And she meant that as helpful to me, right? She told me I had a great voice in writing, and there were lots of things that she really liked about my work, and she was trying to help me. And but I didn't really that wasn't really in the end where I ended up going. I did try my hand at novels about dance, but I think I really wanted to tell my own story and in my own way. The second agent that took an interest, this was the even, I guess, I don't want to say problematic, but I don't know what to do with this feedback. She said she couldn't put down my book and she had no idea how to sell it.
Oh,
And
wow.
what do you do with that, right?
Yeah, really.
It's a
That's
very
like,
strange.
huh.
Well, and I think this is exactly, it's because of the dance. I was saying there's very few books out there, and books that relate to non-dancers, and that's important. And I think the health aspect of it, the wellness, and the going through that is something that you, like you're saying, everyone can connect on. I remember, when I had my arm surgery, they put a rod in my arm so I could, zap things at airports. It's my superpower. I remember really being in this, pain and fear was the dominance. And it's like, oh, I'm not this anymore. I'm that. I am that. Whatever's happening, that's who I am at that moment. And if I had like a story or, somebody else who could tell me, oh, I went through this, don't worry about anesthesia. You'll come through. And my whole thing is, I think I'm going to wake up in the middle of the operating procedure.
Sure.
I'm paranoid about that. But if somebody had talked to me about it, or there was a story, and here's where the Audible thing is cool. If you are going through an illness, a lot of times maybe you need to keep your eyes closed. And listening may be the easiest thing when you're not so well, Sometimes medicine makes you dizzy and, all that kind of stuff. So listening would have helped to move forward. And I think also we're an audience of we want people to do good. America has always rooted for the underdog.
Right. Yeah, we do. We have that.
And so it is that story too,
Sure.
So I mean, well, you got it sold. So, hey,
I did the book with West Virginia University Press, and they've had a lot of successes. And right before my book came out, there was a book on the press that's a collection of short stories, The Secret Life of Church Ladies. And this book was a National Book Award finalist, written by a Black author, and she had run the circuit. Short stories are a hard sell. Traditional publishers want novels. They don't want memoirs and essays. They want, traditional memoirs. And so this particular university press, and I think university presses in general, will take risks on books that they feel are meritorious and also don't neatly fit into some of the other categories that, say, a big New York publisher would be looking for. And that's one of the joys of working with the University Press. I also got to work with the University of Nebraska Press on a book on, it was an editorial position with two other writers, Dinty W. Moore and Aaron Murphy. And we did a book called Bodies of Truth, personal narratives of illness, disability, and medicine. And we had doctors, patients, caregivers, nurses, it's all these different voices. And University of Nebraska was willing to take a chance on a book like that. Which really is exciting.
I think universities come from the aspect of education. And publishers, because it is a business, they have to come from the standpoint of marketing and money.
Absolutely. I mean, they're in a different kind of situation. They aren't going to just have dollars that they can put towards something that they think is meritorious. They also have a bottom line and shareholders, and I can appreciate those things. I also think, though, that it can limit what they do sometimes.
Of course.
And I think I would also say that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're famous, and by famous, I mean you're a household name, and people know when you mention your name, oh, they know who that is. Most people know.
Right.
Then they're going to take the book. But you can be high up in any field and not be a household name, so they're not going to take it.
right.
That's just the way they, yeah.
And sometimes that does some really important work. I mean, Misty Copeland's memoir was on a big New York press, and she has an amazing story to tell. And she is really helping to re-envision what classical dance and ballet look like in the future, and talks very openly about both, you know, the things that went in her favor and the things that she had to overcome. And you know, we hate to say that race plays a role, but it does. And a voice like hers got pushed forward. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't want to completely, you know, sound like I'm against, you know, big publishing, but I do think that publishing is more vibrant because there are all these different.
And it's changed now because we've also got self-publishing, you know, just get an editor, everyone. You know, but self-publishing, but it is a big deal. And the university role too. Universities are the hotbed of change. When something is going down, that's where the protests start. You know, universities, you're thinking about everything's always changing and moving, and so they're doing their role of that. And it's exciting because we do have those outlets, and authors and writers get to unite over something a little different. So it is like going back to the music thing. It's like independent labels, really. Independent music, but with a different kind of publisher. You know, speaking of, you know, the big, you know, record deals, look what happened to Prince and how he had to change his name, you know. And so he really went through it, but he really had integrity. And I think, you know, just in going back to the dance, that's what, you know, really ultimately took his life, was the pain he endured. And, you know, unfortunately having to take all the painkillers, which was even going against his spiritual beliefs. What he was doing, which is it. Oh man, I'm still crying over him.
You know,
It's a sad thing.
You know, a new album coming out that he had put in the vault, and they've put out just a few songs, and listening to these songs, and they speak so much to our current day. I mean, he was so ahead of his time in so many ways. But you know, again, a workaday artist. I mean, I don't know if it's true because I wasn't friends with Prince. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have known him.
Me too.
But you know, the standard story about Prince is he wrote a song a day, and that takes an incredible creative output. I mean, I wish I could say I invented a new poem every day, or I wrote a new essay every day. You know, I try to write every day, but I'm certainly not at that level.
Wow. But this daily thing is because it becomes routine. And so you're using your exercise and it becomes a flow. It's like learning your scales first, right?
Yeah. And a lot of what I write gets pitched. I mean, I get the vault and that some things aren't for consumption and other things get shaped that way. We all, you know, with this new record, I think what we're understanding is sometimes the artist doesn't always see his or her best work. Because a lot of people are talking about like, how did this one get relegated to the vault? Now, it was finished around 2010, so you also have to look at where we were at that point. Where, you know, but how do we see ourselves versus how do our audiences see us is a really interesting question for anyone who's been a dancer.
Or anybody in the creative field, because we start over editing. I just read Nancy a quote. You know, I know we're recording this, but yesterday was Beatrix Potter's birthday. And I was going through, and I always do a quote of day on Twitter, and I always try to find something, either you've got to laugh or be inspired or, you know, think. And Beatrix Potter, I was like, man, you said some interesting things. And we'll play with Flopsy and Mopsy. But she did, and I don't have it in front of me, but there was a quote talking about so many people, they'll have some success. And after that success, they're trying to replicate it so much that they take the edge off of the first success. And I think that's something that's really hard to not. We self-destruct. Creative people, we tend to do that. We, not personally, but we'll take our work and try and over polish it and not step back. Nancy is a painter, a wildlife artist. And you always had that moment where you had to, if you didn't sign the painting, you'll keep overpaint the painting.
Yeah, it's like, when do you stop? And then if you stop painting and you look at it like 3 days later, half the time you're like, oh, throw it out, start over.
Yeah. But
you're never really satisfied.
Sure. I think it was a poet, Galway Canal, who said that poems are never finished, just abandoned.
Yes.
Yeah. That resonates, I think.
That's how my songwriting is like that. I have boxes of songs, and it's like every time I'll pick it up, I'll change the whole melody, or no, what was I thinking? Oh, that's childish. And then somebody else will go, oh man, that's really cool. Like, that was childish. No, so it goes into this, you go through cycles, and it really has to do with us as growth as human beings. We're all in different stages. That's why relationships are hard. One person grows in this aspect, the other person grows in another aspect, and we need to respect each other's growths in the different aspects. It's never at the same time, because that's not what makes the world. I mean, that's why the earth spins around the sun. It makes no sense.
Okay.
But the world is not flat. Just saying.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think dancers understand that the world is not flat.
Off the edge.
Yeah, dancers know that more than anybody. The world is not flat. But wow, what an interesting conversation. We've covered a whole bunch. We've got Prince, we've got Cheetos. We've got a lot of ums. What more do we want? But what is next for you? Oh, and I could see a really cool book club. Are you going to do that with us?
I love book clubs. I mean, book clubs are just, reading and writing are kissing cousins. I was a reader way before I was a writer. And now one of my biggest inspirations as a writer, reading other folks. So, I think that's all jumbled together in a wonderful way. But I'm working on another collection of essays, and I feel like poems sort of creep into my world. Just sometimes that the thing just has to be what it is, and sometimes it's a poem. But I've been writing a lot of essays, and the essays have sort of a commonality. They're all somehow tied to a cover song. And
cool.
This happened. I wrote an essay about a cover song, and it was sort of a one-off thing. I was thinking about some things, and a friend of mine, Keegan Lester, had won a book prize for his first collection of poetry, and he was giving a reading here in Morgantown at a very hip place called 123 Pleasant Street, which is usually where bands play. And he was having his book launch there, and he'd asked a bunch of his friends to read, and I said, I can't read in a bar. I'm like a middle-aged lady.
Why not?
Oh, come on.
You can totally read in a bar. And
of course you can.
So,
have a glass of wine, but it must be a blend. They're the best glasses of wine.
There you go. And so I read this. It's a real short essay, and I read it, and people really connected to it. And folks were like, do you have more of this? And so I started thinking about it, and it was like kind of in the back of my head, and other songs started coming into my orbit. And as it turns out, I am named after a cover song. So my parents love Motown, and I am named for the Four Tops rendition of Walk Away Renee. But the song was originally performed and written by a band called The Left Bank. So,
cool.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times the song serves some other purpose, right? I get to something I want to be talking about or writing about because I'm listening to the song. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So I was listening to No Doubt, some No Doubt covers. And I realized there was a time when I was a young adult that I was like, Gwen Stefani is it. And then so is Molly Ringwald and Winona Ryder and all these things.
Oh, yeah. Let's go back. Yeah. Let's go to the Breakfast Club. There's a,
right.
Yeah, the Breakfast Club, I think, and Reality Bites, those two.
Yeah.
And The Big Chill. All of those have the best soundtracks, right?
So I started thinking about how my early sense of self was shaped by these women. And now where are we all at? Well, Gwen Stefani is a judge on The Voice and is buying a house with Blake Shelton. And
that is wild. That is wild.
It is.
How did the Orange County girl meet Oklahoma boy?
Yeah.
Right.
And then, how did that happen? And even how her music changed from when she was with No Doubt. I mean, she was a little punk rocker.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She was fierce.
Now she's going to go country western.
Yeah, I know.
She's going to go country now.
So, yeah. And then what's her name? The other girl, not Molly Ringwald. Well, she's doing stuff too.
She is, but Molly Ringwald and Winona Ryder are playing moms now, right?
Winona Ryder was a little shoplifter for a while. Don't forget that.
Right, but now she plays the mom, I think, on Stranger Things, right? So
I don't know.
Oh,
yeah, so
you have to watch that.
She's playing a mom. She's supposed to play nasty Heather.
Right.
Evil Heather.
So these we've all changed, we've all evolved, and it made me think about when I was a young adult, and the thing that kind of tied it all together for me was what happened with Monica Lewinsky, and then seeing how she's evolved now.
Wow, yeah.
I admire the heck out of her.
Yeah, she stood up. Don't even start me. Don't even start me, because at least she stood up and said, and some people just continued on. Anyway, I will not get started.
But the songs sort of allowed me entree into thinking about those things and writing those essays. And so I think my next book is all going to be all around, what does it mean to remake something?
Well, this is cool because also the music from those time frames is coming back around, and some of it they're calling classic rock, and I think that is completely rude, so I do.
Well, all right.
But no, because I'm really into this. You've got to read Lyrics for Rock Stars. I'm going to send you a link to it. Incredible book about women in Colorado. So that's awesome. You totally got to read this. But the whole music part with the cover stories, which I love, even going back to talking about essays, a memoir and essays is, there's not that many out there. Not many people are doing it in that fashion. And you're saying, oh, they want novels. The essay thing, I think, is really where we're at. It's like a book of short stories. That's our attention span as human beings right now. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, it's like, I'll pick this, you can read it in order or not. You can go back to it, revisit an essay, but you don't have to read the whole book. We're kind of that way. And it goes musically. Now we're in the society of singles. It's like, or you do an album, or, okay, I've got 10 singles out, now I can create an album. It kind of goes hand in hand with what's happening. And now there's the reissues of the songs with, a lot of musicians we're interviewing that have, done so much over the years. They'll turn around and go, okay, it's time to put a reissue out of these songs and add 2 bonus tracks. So that's happening. And I don't want the world of full albums to go away, because I love the concept album, but that's kind of what you're doing. I like that. And now, is Prince going to be in there?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's important. It's important. But yeah, if you look, Prince and Michael Jackson brought attention to dance that I think we look at all these performers like Beyonce and, all of these getting out there. Tina Turner, look at her as dancers. She worked it, man.
Yeah.
Madonna,
classically trained.
It's huge, and it's so much work what they do on stage, and to sing on top of it and wear those outfits. Let's just talk about that, dude, seriously.
Tina Turner's legs are legendary, and I took my dad to see Tina Turner for his 50th birthday, and she was a seasoned performer at that point, I think is the right way to say that.
Nicely put.
She outperformed everyone in her show, who were all phenomenal. I mean, she did such a show. I mean,
look at Cher too.
So much
We had her head of dance, Jamal Story, was on our show.
Oh, wow.
And he wrote a novel on dance. He was one of the two people with dance books on our show, and it's a mystery. It's and it's, you know, yeah. He, look him up if you watch his performing, and it's like, wow. But what I like about these performers with dance is it gives a fresh edge to society to open their mind to dance again, because I think that ballet, it's, oh, you have to drink tea and be, you know, it's that balance of like opera is hard to get it out there too, and it's a beautiful art form, and ballet is exquisite. It really is amazing, but I think it's hard to, it's like poetry. We got to, how do we keep it out there, you know?
Yeah. And how do you invite people in so that they don't feel that way?
Right.
One of the things about dancers is, for millennia, the dancer was always seen, never heard from, right? So there was an inherent sense of mystery that kind of attended classical dance in that way, and was promoted by, you know, companies. Well, we want our dancers to have a sense of mystery. But there's also a kind of fraught relationship with the courtesan and the dancer, right? So back in, you know, the mid 1800s, when they had the foyer de danse at the Paris Opera, you know, gentlemen would come and find their consorts from amongst the dancers, and this was a thing.
This is before vaudeville,
right? So it's a very interesting thing to look at how we got here, and how many of those things have now persisted to keep the everyday person from really enjoying an art form that could be a lot more democratized and a lot more available to folks. And hopefully with some of the conversations that are happening and the new ways of exposing people to dance.
This is important about ballet too, with dance. If a male went out to dance, then, oh, you're gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But the way people would say that and perceive it became, and I also think in regards to race, it was an issue too. Yeah. You know, so we need more voices out there so that there could be a, you know, I always think the arts are the way to bridge the gaps of humanity.
I think so too. They can be, you know, very instrumental. There's some folks right now around Asian American dancers or Asian dancers that are pushing back on the stereotypes, the way that we portray Asian cultures in classical dance, because they were, to use the term, orientalized, right, and made other, instead of embraced for, you know, more authentically what they are. And the group that's doing that is and I'm sorry if I botched their name, but it's like the Final Bow for Yellow Face or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And they're doing some incredible work around these issues. And there's also a group that's called Memoirs of Black Ballet that have a website that is doing a ton to bring the stories of Black dancers, and especially Black ballet dancers.
Wow, that's huge. That's important because, you know, wasn't there also a thing about tap dance?
Oh gosh, that's such a stereotype for sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think that's where it started, this stereotyping. You know, it's like Black people can tap dance and sing gospel, and that's that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So a Black person to sing opera would be, I know from my parents, they would find that absolutely outlandish.
Sure.
It would even be possible.
Sure. And then you look at a figure like Arthur Mitchell, who, you know, was a Black dancer for George Balanchine at the New York City Ballet at a time when, you know, people may not have been ready to see a Black man partnering a white woman, and he put that on the stage. Yeah. On the other hand, George Balanchine is a lot of the root cause of American dancers being so thin and having a certain and a very particular look.
Oh, okay. So I want to talk about that, because it's from stories I've heard, it's like you're starving yourselves and yet you have to perform. And you know, it's like, do you have to be that skinny? Because if you're fit, you're fit. Some people's bodies are different. And I don't know how you guys do all that stuff, because right now I'm trying to do, I do this 22 sit-ups a day, push-ups a day for veteran suicide to raise awareness. And I keep every 22 days, I'm like, okay, I'm doing it again. Now I've got myself in trouble because of our driving. I'm like, I'm not doing it in a, you know, a rest area at night. It's not happening. So I end up having to do, like the other day, it's like 4, and then like something will happen. So like now I need to do double again. So I have to keep doing these double days. Or the other day I did 100 and something sit-ups, push-ups. So I'm in trouble because I need to do that daily thing when you were talking about we need to do the action every single day. But when you look at all the work that goes in, everybody's body is different. Even for doing these push-ups, I had to learn how to do it according to just even the length of my body, and being a woman and having a rod in my arm, which actually is stronger than anything.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that, you know, ballet is, again, in a place of transition when it comes to the look and what is the ideal ballet body. And there was a lot of pressure for thinness. You know, Gelty Kirkland writes about this in her memoir. You know, many dancers have written about it. Misty Copeland, for sure. They don't come out as much anymore and just say, oh, you have to be thin. They say you have to lengthen, right? Well,
no, you get to get
if your muscles are a certain way, how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I've started to see the approach to teaching dancers start to make some good changes. So one of the things that I learned about in American Ballet Theater's national training curriculum is health and nutrition, and especially nutrition. They had a nutritionist who wrote part of their training materials based on what is a healthy diet for a dancer. And you know, the care that they did to work with experts, psychologists, medical doctors, physical therapists, nutritionists, when they put this together so that those things were cohesive, was completely different than many of the conversations around those issues that I had as someone who trained mostly in the 80s. In the 80s, I mean, there was still, you know, some scenarios in the early 80s where teachers were smoking in dance studios, and this was just a thing. I mean,
dude, everything happened in the 80s. It was like it was the recycling of the 60s.
Right. So, you know, we're in a very different place around those issues. And is it completely fixed? No, right? I don't want it to gloss over it in that way. But there are groups that are starting to look at this in a more comprehensive way, and to integrate what we know from health and nutrition, from the medical world, into the training of a dancer. How do you make a body strong and able to, you know, handle the rigors of dance? We're also becoming more inclusive about, you know, what dance looks like, and whether it's the Trocadero, the group of all male dancers, the Dance on Point. You know, there are dancers, the first trans dancers that are getting their first contracts in ballet companies. If it's the racial reckoning, it's the body image issues. I mean, the whole of classical dance is reinventing itself.
Well, it's kind of like with your book going to a university press versus the big publisher. They want this. We have more options now with the way the world is, especially through digital life, you know, and it's made us really think, what are we doing in our human life? You know, they're connected, you know, but I think these kind of groups are important. And I think people are going to start going, okay, well, I want to support this group of dancers over here. And so I think it's kind of where we are in the world. It's exciting. It is exciting to move past these
really old ideas.
Ideas, right? And we're starting to see the shakeup at the highest level. So a couple of years ago, I guess it's almost been 5 years now, I wrote an article. It was a scholarly article with a colleague of mine who studies women in leadership. Her name's Dr. Lisa DeFrank-Cole. And we wrote about gender inequality at the artistic director level and how that manifests, very few ballets by women choreographers. And that is starting to change in really substantial ways. And more women are taking over the helms of ballet companies. And so I think you're seeing that change as well. And hopefully we're going to see better gender balance, better racial balance in those leadership roles, which then change the whole fabric of things.
And that changes the audience too.
Oh, absolutely.
The audience that, we've got to open our minds up and, stop the boundaries of ignorance.
Absolutely.
Really.
And you'll see this, if you go see Misty Copeland perform, she has brought many, many more people into that audience. Because they relate to her in a very visceral way. And so, they're more racially diverse. They're just more diverse in general, age, racial makeup, all sorts of things that are healthy. These are so healthy and exciting.
It is exciting. I think, just look at what, I've got his name is like on Miranda. What's his name?
Talking about Hamilton.
Yeah, Hamilton.
Lee.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Thank you, Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yes.
Yeah.
What he has done in his productions, because that includes dance, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
he broke those stereotypes all the way across, and how he could get rap into everybody's body. Like, you could hear, you could understand. He kind of broke those. And I think it takes those people who just don't say no, just keep going, they keep, being persistent.
A great example of this is the Access Dance Company. And the Access Dance Company has both able and disabled dancers in it. And they do beautiful work that is so outside what we would narrowly consider dance. And the dance, it's beautiful. When I saw them, I was moved to tears because both my old self and my current self identified.
See,
so beautiful. There's a couple of other dancing wheels, I think, in Ohio and some others that are really looking at the body in such an inclusive way. It's really exciting to see these things.
It's never over. It just changes. It just morphs and changes. And that opens up another creative door. Like Nancy's saying, the door is just, here it is. There's this whole other way of doing something. And that's the exciting part of life. And it's, even when we look at the way the world is right now, everyone's arguing, there's COVID, there's this, there's climate change, which gets really heavy on everyone's shoulders. Think about the youth. How heavy is that on their shoulders, today? But that heaviness is about, okay, how creativity is, the arts are so important to survival and going beyond survival and thriving. So when all these heavy things are there, the arts, dance, music, writing, reading, help us escape, but also remind us how to be creative to get through situations. And maybe look at everyone during COVID has changed how they work. People have opened businesses that they always wanted to do, but COVID was like, this is your opportunity. There's all kinds of new things happening. So I think, as bad as it sounds out there in the world, which there's real situations, there's all this creativity and change that's happening. It's like, you could see, it's like the yeast is fermenting and bubbling right now, and now I want some bread.
But the arts really are the history of humankind. It's our personal history. Of how we overcome things, how we invent new things, why we do what we do. To me, it all comes from the arts, and it pushes, the art pushes, and then somebody else will come along and sing a song about, hey, did you see what just happened?
Right.
So it's like the forerunner and at the back end.
Sure.
So it's just like the full history of what we are as people.
Yeah.
It really is an extraordinary legacy. We have a lovely art museum on campus, and every once in a while I get the opportunity to work with the folks there, which is always a joy. And being around the art itself, being in and feeling like I can just take in this beauty. I can just find a connection with a piece. I can be puzzled, but that puzzlement can be uplifting, not a burden.
That's curiosity. It's like, oh, what? Yeah, it's like reading a mystery novel. Yeah. Well, that's it, because it's all about how we take things in. You know, the art is opinionated, because we all have a thought about it, and it's actually, that's where it's important. Not go, oh, this is good or bad. It's opinionated on, oh, I think this, and I think it's the best thing that gets us all to think. This is awesome. What a conversation. Have we covered everything?
We did.
Oh, wow. I love it. Well, please keep us posted on your next book. I'm dying to read that. I mean, that's up my alley for sure. I'm so into music. I love it.
I always think about, there was a dancer who wrote a memoir called Winter Season. Her name was Tony Bentley, and she says dancers eat music.
Yes.
And I wondered why, I'm not a rock critic, or a music critic or a musicologist, but like many people, music has played a fundamental role in my life. So it's been fun to work on this new project, but it was also, music played a huge role in Fierce and Delicate. Because,
absolutely.
All those scores, all that beautiful music. Like when you hear Swan Lake, you feel it in your sternum.
Yeah. Exactly. Music is it. I mean, I like that. Dancers eat music. I'll never forget that.
It's your soul.
Yeah.
It's your soul.
Yeah. And it's, dance is, it's so, I wouldn't say raw, but it is part of who we are. Like, being raised in Africa and in Kenya and living with different tribes at a very young age, dance was part of communication. And it was about showing yourself, not being ashamed, it's being unbridled, yet the art of dance is about that dynamic of, okay, bridle this, but not that. And, that's like all that, but there's just that emotion, if you don't tap your foot to music or anything,
there's something wrong.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You have to feel it somewhere.
You have to feel, we call it wiggy butt, it's, you got to shake it. Right now, the dog we're hanging out, because we pet sit as we travel too. So the dog we're hanging out, he doesn't have the wiggy butt. He's got the waggy butt. He's a slow waggy butt.
He's very slow. It's like, man, speed it up.
All right. On that note, we're going to close with the waggy butt. So everyone, I'll send everyone to your website. Is that the best place to connect to get your book, at ReneeNicholson.com?
That's one place, and of course at West Virginia University Press's website.
Okay.
You can find the book there also.
Yeah, go right to the press. That's awesome. That's always cool. And again, the book is Fierce and Delicate, Essays on Dance and Illness, and it's by Renée K. Nicholson. And of course, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. We air our shows Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, keep up with us. If you go on our site, Big Blend Radio, sign up for our newsletter so you can get our digital magazines as they come out every 2 weeks now. And we've gone from 2 to 9 magazines because we're so bored with our lives.
We have nothing else to do.
We have nothing else to do, but no, just teasing. But thank you so much, Renee. It's been a true